What's up, Wrap Shop owners? My name is Brent Knott, and I'm here today on this video to break down the three key ceilings or thresholds that I think that you're going to hit in your wrap shop journey. And my goal with this video is to help you not only identify where you're at based on revenue, but also help you with a game plan moving forward to try to eliminate that ceiling and start working towards the next thing. When I was growing my business, there was not a lot of business information. It was all, hey, let's show you how to wrap. Let's show you how to be a technician. Let's show you how to refine your skills. But nobody was like, hey, here's how to build $1 million wrap shop. And I'm on the path, not saying that all of my answers are the correct thing, but what I can say is for a fact that implementing these things or taking a method that maybe we go over in this video and dissecting it and applying it towards you and your business might help you just take that one golden nugget to launch forward and hit some momentum in your business. Or maybe you already have momentum, but you're seeing that the seams are starting to crack. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the revenue ceilings from $0 to $300,000, from $300 to $700,000, and from $700 to $1.5 million to where you can start working in advance. Even if you're a $300,000 shop, there are lessons from the $700K to $1.5 million that you do not have to wait to apply to your business. But the goal is there are specific things that you need to be doing whenever you're at the $300,000 range to even get there. So I just wanted to dissect and break down these revenue ceilings. These were the areas that I, through conversation with a lot of wrap shop owners, identified as key points or pivotal points that we have to learn new skills. And so essentially what happens is when we hit these revenue ceilings, they are times in which we have to level up our skill set. We have to start operating a little bit differently. What got you here will not get you there. And so I just wanted to help you identify where you're at, what the culprits are, and how you can get past it. So without further ado, let's hop right in. Section 1, your guide to surviving the grind phase. So let's talk about this phase. Nobody wants to admit it. I mean, you're basically going to be working 80-hour weeks. And when you're the installer, the salesperson, the janitor, the marketer, everything, you literally have to grind your face off. It takes something. There is always a cost. It's going to cost you time or money, and you most likely don't have money. So it's going to cost you time on your first year to 2 years of business. Now, the good news is it doesn't need to take longer than 1 or 2 years. I think that sometimes people like to cope that it's going to take you many years to get your business off the ground. It is going to take time, but it does not need to take you many years to get through the $0 to $300,000 range. And to break it down in simple math, what I mean by this is a $300,000 year is nothing more than basically just shy above 1 vehicle a week. That's it. 1 vehicle a week is your metric. How do I get 1 vehicle a week? Now, obviously, there are some constraints, which is essentially that you are going to be limited on your bandwidth and how often you can do things. You're going to feel like a typewriter. I remember this phase vividly because my mentor would not allow me to market. He had the capital to market for me. I had access to his Amex. I had basically unlimited working capital. I was lucky that I had a mentor like that. But he was also the most fundamental businessman I have ever met. He wanted me to learn how to get business. And during this phase, the first culprit that you're going to go through is that you are the business and you are the salesperson. You are the person who's going to know all the pricing. You are the only person your customer is going to trust. But the real problem is that you're not actually leveraging your time correctly. Our goal is, if you just simply make it get 1 vehicle per week and then modify your week to do that. So it could be that your week, as far as a process, because when you first start off, you have no processes. But if I am telling you it's only one vehicle per week to hit $300,000 and you're only doing 150K in the year, then why? And what are you doing in all the extra time that you have to generate one vehicle per week, right? So it could be that you are selling on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and you're producing and installing on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And that is your revolution over and over and over, right? And as you start to get up closer to the $150,000 to $200,000 range, you should be looking at most likely an administrative assistant, most likely who can help you continue your sales mission of moving that typewriter faster, keeping you on track to that one vehicle per week KPI. Now, a lot of people get discouraged with cold sales processes because it's a lot of output for not a lot of reward, but it's free. And so the problem is nobody knows your business exists. So every single week, you need to, out of that, like if half your week is selling and half your week is installing, this should be totally fine, especially in the commercial sector. Obviously in the color change world, like your install times take a little longer, but you should definitely be charging more then. Now, while you're working through this, you have to keep in mind on your cold process, it's all about how you frame the lens. I hear a lot of people are like, well, I've reached out to 100 people. It's like, okay, and like, if you've reached out to 100 people, why is it not 1,000 or 2,000 people? Because I firmly believe that you can make 50 to 100 contacts per day. And I don't mean cold calls, contacts. This means that you could do like 50 cold calls, 50 calls to existing people in your network, 50 calls to the people in your phone book, on your phone, 50 additional contacts on Facebook or Instagram where you're literally just searching HVAC, electrical, plumbing, whatever the business is, or finding, if you're a retail based, then you're going into every single group, the Honda group, the Chevy groups, the Corvette groups, the Mustang groups, and you're literally just adding contacts from within the group. You're paying attention to everything to where you have all these potential leads that don't know that you exist, and you're just trying to get them to the next step. You're not trying to say, hey, buy from me. That's thirsty. Nobody wants to deal with somebody who is desperate. But if you had 1,000 or 2,000 total contacts across the board that you are literally just saying, let me get you to the next step. 0 step is you don't know I exist. Let me just introduce myself. Step 2 is I don't know who I should be working with. Who is the fleet manager? I just need a name. And you're just slowly ratcheting yourself from left to right on your sales pipeline of getting all these other people to the next step, because a lot of the people aren't buying at the time that you are reaching out to them, but you need to be top of mind when they do. And so the goal in this next step process of your cold outreach is that if you had 2,000 of these, eventually you're going to have like 10 people over here that are going literally from the I purchased a vehicle to reached out to you to get your job done to I'm also reaching out to 50 new people to let them know that I exist. And you're just constantly doing this. It's just a barrage of output. There are ways to systemize this. However, I'm not a huge fan because usually people can see that as robotic and like more of an automation. Make it personal. Go on Facebook. One of the ways you can hack the Facebook algorithm, if you're retail or commercial, is like I will go on my personal business Facebook page and I will literally go find and like every HVAC page in my community. I'll basically say something along the lines of like maybe they had a team culture meeting. It's like culture is important to business, but it's got my business name on the comment. Hey, love your wraps. Never say, hey, buy from me. That's thirsty. I just put my name in front of their business constantly. Because if you think about your business Facebook page, do you really get that much attention outside of, potentially advertising? Not really. Facebook and Instagram greatly throttles how much exposure we get on our business pages, more so Facebook than Instagram. So I am constantly liking and commenting on all of my potential prospects' pages to gather more eyeballs that I exist. I am a solution to a problem that you might not have today, but in 6 months' time when you buy that vehicle, I want to be bidding your job. And so you have to figure out, how can I get one vehicle a week? That is it. The 0 to 300K phase, it's rough. You're going to go through cash flow problems. With that being said, don't be desperate with your cash flow. And what I mean by that is, sometimes, because we have holes in our schedule, we will take a job very fast and we'll break our own standards of not taking a deposit because we're just like, let's just get the $4,000 or the $5,000 for the project right on the end of the week. And then they go and they're more sophisticated in business and they send Johnny Boy to come pick up your commercial vehicle wrap and they don't have payment. Don't do that. Literally always take a deposit before you start design, and always make sure that you're getting paid before you release the vehicle. Because especially in this early phase of your business, you can't afford to be a bank for somebody else, nor should you be. You are in the vehicle wrap industry. You are not a financial institution. So make sure you're always, it is probably more imperative than anything to make sure you are always getting your money before you release a vehicle, and you're always getting a deposit to ensure that you're keeping the lights on and your building paid for. During this early phase, you really need to be documenting, like, how are you talking to your customers? Because that first hire, like if it's an admin, and it doesn't have to be, I just am a firm believer it's an admin. You need to be documenting your FAQs. This is the one thing, I'll be honest, guys. I did not document anything for probably 9 years. And it was very hard to go back as a almost 7-figure shop and redo all my systems and processes. So do it while you're doing your business. Document. Every time a customer hits you with an objection, write it down. And then write your answer that you gave to the customer. Especially nowadays with AI, like you could literally frame up your FAQ, and then when you hire your new person, like you could just have them reference the AI and it'll tell you what you've already said so that you don't have to repeat yourself. But you need to be documenting every objection, every problem. When a customer's pissed off at you for some reason, like the expectation wasn't met, whatever it may be, document, just write it down and write what happened and what you did about it. It's almost like a journal, right? Because when you go and hire your next person, and let's just say they were more administrative type, they need documentation to reference, else they're just going to ask you questions every single time they get presented that problem. And you've already rented that movie, so why can't you just let them watch the movie or see the documentation instead of you having to relive it again? And then now you're paying somebody to just ask you questions for answers constantly. And that's kind of a big mistake. So, you need to, during this $0 to $300,000 wave of your business, you need to massively focus on acquisition of new customers. And every single customer that you have, one way to grow basically for free is, it's very hard to earn a customer, but it's very easy to maintain a customer long term. So while you have that customer, you do everything to make sure that you are successful in the goal or event of getting a 5-star review. Because most of your leads will come from Google, regardless of how good your website is or anything like that. Google Maps is where you're going to receive a lot of your immediate leads. And then your social media presence is also going to be where you're going to slowly acquire attention. You should make it your mission to get a Google review for every single customer that you get, period, at all costs. And Once you get the review, then do a follow-up 2 weeks later. And this is probably one of the most important parts. Hey, customer, I'm just checking in with you to see that everything was to your needs and satisfaction, yes or no? If yes, great. As you know, as a small business, are there 1 or 2 people in your network that you can refer me to that would also benefit from my service? Because now it was hard for you to earn that person, but when you get an introduction from somebody else and if they're like, yeah, so-and-so with XY company, it's like, fantastic. Instead of me just calling him out of the blue, can you send a 3-way text to him right now and just let him know that I exist? And then whenever they do that, then you can then take that off platform and handle business based on the circumstance. But now you have the name recognition of that person putting his foot out for you. And then you now have an in with somebody that you can slowly nurture until they have a need as well for that vehicle wrap. So you're taking 1 customer and turning them into 2 or 3, right? And it's just overlooked. We focus so much on like, what's the next thing? And we don't leverage our network that we gain at all. Now during this phase, you're going to be alone a lot and you're gonna have a lot of extra time. You're not quite leading somebody just yet, especially the 0 to 150K phase. I highly recommend document your business journey. Just talk to a camera. Talk to your phone, do audio recordings. I prefer video, you get more leverage out of it. You can download loom.com and literally like instead of it storing in your phone, it will store on their cloud server so it doesn't eat up all your space. And you can just put this on a tripod. And while you're installing a car, you could literally be talking about like, hey, so on this vehicle, this door handle is really difficult to pull apart. Here's why, because the door panel doesn't want to disattach from the body panel. It often breaks clips, whatever it may be, right? Like it could be like your Jeep. Hey, when we pull these clips off of this fender flare, they usually break. They're a XY clip on Amazon, or here's the part number at Jeep. And you're pretty much guaranteed having to replace those clips. But now you have a procedure in the future for a future employee. And that way, when they go to pull that Jeep apart and they're watching that video, you forget to tell them to order clips, possibly, because you're busy doing some other things. That video, you've already documented they need to do that. And then if they're a really good employee, they're like, hey boss, by the way, we need to order some of these clips. You could at least prompt the, hey, do we have X, Y, and get you ahead of the game for a potential problem in the future. So the leverage that you can gain in the next 1 or 2 years by documenting and recording you alone doing things is just massive. I think that if you're doing sales calls, you should record every single one of them. I think you should get it transcribed and throw it in ChatGPT and say, hey, what could I have done better? It'll tell you like, you know, I'm pretty bad at this sometimes where like I pretty much have the sale, but I don't push on like a call to action of like proceeding forward sometimes. And that's something that through transcriptions, it's like, hey, by the way, sometimes the customer seems to have a really high intent, but then you don't CTA or you don't call to action and close. And so I started working on that where I started offering like, hey, so what do we need to do to get you on the schedule? Like assuming the sale. But I wouldn't have noticed that as much if I wasn't recording and documenting my sales calls. Now, I do believe, to close out this section of $0 to $300,000, I do believe that you should be trying to especially as you start hitting like the 150 to 300K, I think you should be trying to figure out other means to acquire new businesses. And you should be curious about it. You should not give up. You should try just about everything and see what works for you. It could be, it could be Facebook ads. It could be doing DIY Facebook ads, and most of them aren't going to work. But if you just keep testing and trying things and you're learning a skill, then eventually you'll crack the code on what works in your area, and you can, allocate, let's just say 5% of every sale towards marketing to gain more business. This is very, very conservative. It probably won't net you a massive amount of sales. But the point is, if you're using the fundamentals of before where, okay, I earn that customer, I ask them for referrals, and then also try to get more business out of that customer, then you're growing your business. So 0 to 300K, start to be a little bit explorative with some marketing processes. Don't just ignore it. Don't just say, oh, I'm only a word of mouth business. Yes, highly important. You should figure out your sales process and your customer success. You should dial that in now because it gets more complex down the road, and we'll kind of expand upon that later. Now, the final thing on the 0 to 300K is, what should your team look like? You're clearly wearing all the hats. You need to, during this phase, really identify what is my zone of genius? Like, where do I make the business the most money? Am I a designer? Am I a rapper? Or am I a salesperson / leader? Because we're all wired a little different. Me, I was the busy bee. So I made the business the most money by far installing. So if I'm a great installer, then I'm not going to hire another installer because I'm a lot less as good at sales. Now, I do think it's important. I think that if all things were the same and I could replace myself in the install and I had like a rock star come across my plate, that's a different circumstance where if I could rely on somebody for the installs, learning the sales process is probably a higher yield of output, but I wasn't able to do so because of my market demographic. I had to train everybody from zero. I could not get the installers to come to me from the Jacksonville market. So it was much more advantageous for me in my situation to just focus on installing and trying to get somebody to help push and appoint leads to where I could close it at first, or they would just take the sale and close it if it was a lay down sale. So your first hire is going to literally increase your capacity by 50%. So make sure that you have some form of training or onboarding program for them. Even though, like, for example, if you're a big installer, you're probably not going to really understand all of the duties and processes that come with a great administrative assistant. But you can hire a medium to great assistant that you just tell them, hey, I need you to document what you were doing. And that way, if you either terminate or they quit or they move on or you can't afford them, whatever it may be, at least you started the documentation process. And then you just keep refining that over time. I don't believe that your team should be greater than 2 people from 0 to 300K. That's probably the most important thing. Now, there could be some constraints to that, depending on like your skill set, your market, some other things. But I definitely think that you should strive to get as high revenue per employee as possible, and really be careful and make sure that you've optimized for that. So you should not be running at $100,000 per employee. You should be trying to bottom line hitting $150,000 per employee. Now there's going to be small windows. It could be that you are at 250K, okay, with 2 people, and you need the third person to go the capacity goes much beyond the 300K. We have to look at the next hire as essentially an investment. You're going to have to come off of some money yourself in many cases because you don't quite have a bankroll yet. You don't have the cushion that you need in your business just yet. But a good employee should be paying for themselves within the first 60 days. So if they're not, you might need to either terminate or readdress the situation, ensure that they have the tools and resources they need to succeed. But they should be generating you at least break even and working towards ROI, in my opinion, the first 60 days. So in closing, look, the grind phase sucks. It's hard to escape. Don't just look at it based on time, look at it based on what you're doing. Understand that you are essentially building the foundation for everything else. And if you've been here for 5-6 years, then maybe you just haven't come across the right situation or the right information to really like give you that one nugget or that unlock to really kind of audit things by. We all get dropped off at different stages of the mountain. And so don't really judge yourself for that. Like, we all have different journeys. Your journey is unique. So don't beat yourself up too much and just know it will get better. Just be making sure you're building systems while you're grinding. Make sure that you are focused on how are you going to acquire customers and who are you going to serve. And make sure that you understand this is a season. We are being very intentional. The most important part, we're being very intentional. And if you weren't intentional before, let's get intentional now so that we can break out of it. Next up, we have $300,000 to $700,000. And I'm gonna call this stage the best phase of my business and the worst phase of my business, depending on how I looked at it and when and where I was looking at this. So, congratulations, you're out of the grind phase. And you're like, sweet, I hit $300,000 or I hit $400,000, and you think that life's going to start getting easier. I don't think it gets easier. I think just we start to adapt and learn how to deal with the pressures of the business. But during this phase of the awkward middle, now you are too big to do it all yourself, but you're also too small to have a real team. And my scenario of this was we were right around like $350,000 in sales. I remember talking to my mentor, and he's like, "Congrats! Like you doubled. We went from 150 to 300. We were currently a team. I remember this vividly. I don't remember everything about my business journey, but this era I remember vividly. I had myself, James, and Davey. And we were awesome. Like we were a great team together during this era. James had a lot of experience. He was disgruntled working at another sign shop, and he was just a Swiss Army knife. Really strong designer for this type of work. He could pull permits. His attention to detail was a little poor, but like his ability to hand paint signs and do routed signs and pull permits and understand like vehicle wraps and do the design work for the vehicle wraps. Like he was just really strong overall. And I remember us having a meeting with my mentor, and he's like, "Hey, congrats, you doubled. So what's the revenue goal for next year?" And I was like, "I don't know, like 400K. And he goes, "You're thinking too small. It would barely even cost you to hit 400K. Like, so why not 500-600K?" And I was just like looking at it, and I was like, there's no shot that we could do that. And I remember him doing the math. Let me find out what the math exactly was. But there is 2,080 business hours in the year, so it would be 500,000 divided by 2,080. And he says, "You don't think that you could generate $240 an hour?" And so like if we also kind of took that and let's just say divided it by vehicles, or let's just say by the weeks of the year, then we would have to generate essentially $9,615 per week, okay? And then if we divide that by $4,500, because we're a car wrap shop, we only need to sell 2 car wraps a week. That's it. Like, now obviously it's a lot harder than that, but it's about the consistency of the 2 vehicles a week. But when you think about the fulfillment, it's only 2 cars a week. And when you start breaking things down and forecasting it based on that, then you can kind of reverse engineer like, okay, I should not be worrying about jamming 3-4 cars in this week. I should just be filling up 2 cars a week and stay steady and constant on that. Well, me, James, and Davey looked at each other and said, we're going to commit to hitting 500 to 600K this year. And we're going to do everything in our power to do so. Your role is design. So like everybody could move half a position in either direction. So my job was installing and sales. That was my zone. James was a little bit of sales and admin, design and production. Davey was production, installer help, and a little bit of design. And that was my team. And all of us could do all the positions, but we tried to stay in those lanes so we didn't like trample each other. And sure enough, that next year, with focusing down on our lanes, we did I think we did $575,000 that year. And it was one of my most profitable times. Now, were we stretched a little bit? Yes, but we went into it knowing like, this is our goal. Let's just do it for 1 year and then we will start to re-optimize again. And it was a fun year, man. We worked really, really hard. And then we hit it. Everybody got really good bonuses at the end of the year. We had really great net profit that year because we're doing almost $200,000 revenue per employee. And if you can do $200,000 revenue per employee, typically, depending on your overhead for your building, you're going to make 20 to 30% net profit. And so on 500K, let's just be conservative. And I was paying myself, by the way. It's mandatory. My mentor always taught me to pay myself. So this was just profit after all salaries paid. And this is 2014, 2015. So I think James was at like 40K a year. I think I only paid myself 35K. Davey was like 30K was my payroll roughly at that time. And so 500K times 0.2 is $100,000 additional income or profit left over in the business bank at the end of the year. And so I did a profitable distribution to myself. I also shared a good bit of profits with my team as a thank you. Now that was the upside or the pretty story of the 300 to 700K, right? But where it got ugly is once we got beyond the 3-man team. It was like every time I added a new employee, it was like we now spoke like Spanish to each other, or like there was 2 languages occurring, and the problem started to really expand once we hit like 4 to 5 employees. That 4th employee like broke us. And in our case, it was an administrative assistant. And it was because we never outlined anything. I never documented anything. And it actually started to expose, I never admitted it during that time, but it really exposed our problems. So that's where building that foundation during that 0 to 300K range really helps. Now, what I've kind of called this culprit is like the training burden. You're too busy at this point where everybody kind of has their own lanes, but because everybody's kind of Swiss Army knife, all the information's very generic. It's very vague. You're expecting like this from an employee that was hired from this, right? And so you really need to start dialing in your job descriptions. The 4 positions that really exist inside of a wrap shop is sales and administration, design, print and production, which is usually the same person, and install. So if that's the case, then really now we need to start specializing. That 3-person team, we got to start shifting our mindset a little bit. We need to start making more specialists over generalists, right? So what I mean by specialist is like the admin person, that's their only responsibility is sales and administration. Your designer, that's all they do. The print and production guy, that's all he does. And then your installer, that's all he does. And if they have time, then they can kind of flex a little bit, but we really don't, it gets really gray when you start flexing people around, it gets confusing, and then it becomes really hard to identify where the problems are. In their downtime, start documenting what their processes are and starting to refine those. Like this is a forever process, by the way, of documentation. Like your systems and processes are never perfect. It's like I was just having a conversation yesterday with somebody and they are in that 500K to, I don't know exactly where the revenue is, but it's probably somewhere between 500K to 1.5 million because they're doing very, very good. And I said, isn't it funny how at first we think it's like this one thing we're going to do in our business to grow and scale our wrap shop? And it's like, no, it's like all these little tricks. And they actually likened it to installing. They said, installing is not about like one thing is going to change how I install. It's like all these little tiny tricks that we add to our skill set is actually what makes us a good wrap installer. It's the same for your business. It's little tiny things times 1,000 that turns your business into a well-oiled machine. So you're having each person kind of document. It's like, hey, James, I need you to document exactly how you're setting up files. You have a little more time this week because we don't have a big push. I'm gonna go work on getting more sales, but I need you in the meantime to build out what the process is for setting up a design ready to run for the printer. For some reason, this is also where your employees start to feel like you're trying to replace them because there's like always a scarcity mindset. Employees always look at things as if, what am I losing or what is being taken from me? So when you ask this, you have to make sure to sell the dream as to why. It's like, hey, I want to make sure that you fit in my vision. I want to make sure that you're always growing. I don't want you to be a designer for the rest of your life. I would like you to be like a design manager possibly. So let's level up your skill set too, and let's outline what it takes to run in this position to where when I finally do hire this position, you are the expert in that area and you also understand the training documentation that they are going to be given and you're going to be their leader. So you kind of have to sell it to your staff because if not, like, again, you're limited to only what you can do and then you're only working on your business like this much instead of like at least getting an employee to write like 75% of it and then you go put the final touches on it as the business owner. So in this phase of 300, 700K, you're really going to start building even more onto, like, I guess you would say, like, we have the foundation set. Now you're starting to like upright the walls in your business. If you were building a house, if you will, you're starting to upright all of like the departments and what is required of the department and what is the typical scope of work for said department and what are the expectations and outlines for that department. And this is by far where you should be doing that. If you're in this phase, like, and you did not do the foundational work, do it now, please, like, for the love of God, because it's going to cost you dearly if you're in the 700 to 1.5 million to go backwards. Like, the amount of stress and turmoil that was caused in my life because I had no systems and processes and it was all stuck in my head, being a post, 7-figure shop, and it was just chaos. It was not fun. It was the worst experience of my life. You're going to churn and burn through good people. You're going to lose good staff because you are not an effective leader. You never worked on these skills the whole time. You just stayed in whatever it was that you are proficient at, and it hurts, and it really hurts your pride. It will get to your ego and everything. So make sure we're starting to develop our training programs. Make sure that we are starting to plan for the future. You're building this for 1 or 2 years down the road. You're building this so that if your admin quits or moves unexpectedly, you can quickly replace them, because a lot of shops, the reason why they get stuck in the 500K to 700K range is because they can never get the momentum to crest out of it. And what I mean by that is you take so long to retrain the next person when you lose one. So like, if you lost nobody, cool, we can escape out of it. That was me. We kept everybody and we escaped out of it by sheer chance. But we didn't have good training to where when we hit the later phases, like it clearly like showed the foundation was broken, everything toppled over essentially. The team should definitely look like a 4-person team in my opinion. I think a quality 4-person team should be able to hit almost $1 million. I'm a firm believer in this. And the reason why we want to look at it like that from the 4-person example is, again, if we're in excess of profit, that is the whole point of a business, is to make profit. If we're a 4-person team and we are making net profit, then we have good fundamentals, and then we can move to the next station. We don't want to grow our business for the sake of just revenue. It's insanity. I talk to a lot of shop owners that are trying to hit that $1 million mark, and they're like, I got 8 people on staff. I was like, yeah, your net profit's probably like 5%, right? And they're unhappy. It's not fun. So keep your bottom line in check, because at least if you're going to go through all this misery, you're making money on the bottom. Now, another thing that happens during this era is you're finally starting to task things out. And you really need to keep a check on quality control. What is the standard in your business going to be? How are you going to represent yourself? How are you going to talk to customers? Because if you've hired an admin, then you're no longer talking to all the customers. So what is the standard in which we communicate with customers? If for some reason you're the designer in the business and you hired an installer, then what is the standard in which the client should receive that vehicle wrap in? It needs to be crystal clear. Every time an employee screws up, it's your name, right? And so we need to make sure that our standards in our business are crystal clear. In most cases, you're going to drop a little bit in quality at first, just because you're trying to test out this whole delegation thing. And it's just a matter of us really getting in there and dialing in and teaching the team the culture of like, no, this is what we stand for, and we will not tolerate anything less than. So really the 300 to 700K range is refining on all of the things and the skill sets that you learned from the 0 to 300K. But now you're starting to try to disperse that through a couple of people. And this is like the simplest your team will ever be. And I think you should really enjoy this phase. And if you're not, then just identify, like, why am I unhappy? Is it because you're in the wrong position? Is it because you really are just tolerating a sub-level or a substandard of what you really want to be? Like, terminate the person if they're below standard. Or ask yourself if that person will ever meet your standard. And if the answer is just flat out no, like for sure, like if you do some deep soul searching, then you need to terminate them, because you're long-term not going to keep them anyway. Okay. I'll tell you a story very quickly on it. I had an employee who, very great, amazing employee. And as I was hitting closer to the 7-figure mark, I could tell that because of his skill set, but his lack of care, that I was not going to keep him long term. And so I showed him basically just like, hey man, like when I hired you, you were like a killer, but like where we're at, like I'm aiming for this. So the problem is you're doing this. And the more we get apart from this, here's the gap of frustration. And if I don't see you with me in 2 years, then I might as well just like, I can't rob you of your life. I need to be able to give you, like, I can't steal your life from you. If I know that you're not here in 2 years, I need to find somebody that I know for a fact will be in my business for sure, because they meet our standards. And he understood. He was very upset with me at first, but guess what? He went and started his own business, and he's very happy now. And I enjoy that. And we actually ended up terminating a lot of the work or the skill set in the end that he was, the Swiss Army knife was needed for. So yeah, it worked out. It's always worked out. Every time I've terminated somebody for being substandard, either that helped them improve their life, or they also were not happy either, and they just were too scared to quit. When you hit the 700K to like the 1.5 million mark, this is where like everything just comes together. And I remember I almost hit $1 million like 2 or 3 times. And at the time I was coaching under John Duver, and I hit a point where like I think I was on track for like 900K, but I could see we were doing it wrong. And I just told John, I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna cut some revenue back. I think I'm gonna eliminate some services, um, because I didn't want to just hit the 7-figure mark and cross $1 million with like duct tape over my joints and bones because like it was just that bad, and then like the next year be like horrible, right? So I went back to building my foundation. And if you're in this phase, like I empathize with you. It's hard because you're so close to like this goal, this thing that you never thought could be possible, and you're right there. But really, if your house is in disarray, like you need to fix it. And your house being your business. I think this is also where simplifying your business a little bit makes a massive impact in how the future goes for your business. I think it is not worth having a million different offers. I think that works during the 0 to 300K range because we need revenue. We need things to pay the bills, and it's revenue above everything. But once you start getting into, over 500K, you start adding employees, you talking about teaching and training. Like, could you imagine being a server and working for Cheesecake Factory? Like, I have no idea how they manage that menu. It's like 30 pages of items and ingredients that are completely different, right? This means that they have to store materials for that. They have to remember how to produce it. What if they lose a chef? What is the onboarding process like at a Cheesecake Factory? Like, dear Lord. And I kind of feel like that's the same. Cheesecake Factory is what your typical wrap and sign shop is. Like, we have signs, real estate signs, we have banjo stands, we have magnets that we can do, we got decals, we got shirts, we got hats, we got pins and trinkets and trash and all these things that we can generate revenue with that we can pretty much design and print a logo on, right? It's a lot. And then it means that we have like 100 different vendors, and we have all these SKUs that we have to keep track of. And no wonder why your administrative assistant can't quote jobs by themselves, is because it's just like they don't even know where to start. And then it's no wonder that you're unhappy and upset because now you really have a team of people that you employ that rely just on your wisdom. And a business doesn't have to be that way. I think the best way to do it is, what are your key components that you're going to offer? What is going to be the thing that your shop is known for? Why are you the solution in that specific thing? And really just like bring in the horizontal a little bit and go deeper. And that's a hard thing to do. It's scary, but I can tell you every time I've cut services, I've massively improved not only my quality of life, but the culture in the business, the simplicity of how training operates. Like, I'm not as, if somebody leaves, quits, or moves, like it's not so stressful anymore. Like, it's like, okay, we know the play to run, let's run it. Let's run the play. That's it. It's just run the play. And it greatly reduces the amount of emotion that is involved with running your shop. I do recommend also doing the same with your customers. You have certain customers, and this is so hard. Like, I hate it in a way because you're loyal to certain people, right? Like you're massively loyal to certain people. There were certain people. I have customers that are amazing people, but as I grew, especially around like this $1 million mark, it was almost like I don't know how to say this any other way other than like I felt like I was out leveling them in a way. Like, they had a certain criteria that they wanted to be in, or they wanted to keep me where I was at because it was only for their benefit, and they didn't see my vision, or they didn't allow me to run my business like a business. So for example, I would have certain customers that I would have an admin at the front, and they would disrespect my admin by walking past them and coming to the back of the office, that they were literally walking through a sign that says, "Do not enter." Now, is that a person that truly respects you and respects what you're doing and respects that you have the ability to hire people that are qualified to take care of them? And Austin Cook with the Tinstitute said this a long time ago in one of his videos, and it was, if my customer doesn't trust me to employ people to uphold the standards that I think that I should have, then they probably aren't my customer anyway. Because in many cases, they're just trying to get the best service. But you're now a business. You're close to $1 million. Like, you're a business. There's very few people that make it to the $1 million mark when you look at business stats. And at that point, you have to operate different. You can no longer be the only person dealing with them, and you have to show, so you have to condition these old customers that have maybe been with you now for like 5 to 10 years, depending on how long it took you to get here. You have to start teaching these customers like, hey, I love you, but you really need to talk to my admin. Because if you don't talk to my admin or my sales rep or whoever the specific person that they need to talk to is, then you're failing them. Because my role in the business is X, Y, and I'm going to delegate it to them. And so you're actually delaying your sales process by coming to me, because that's not my role. I've hired this person, I trust this person, and this is who you should deal with. And we had to terminate some customers because of this. They would still bypass that person. And I'm like, hey, like, you're disrespecting my team. And what's interesting is I allowed it to happen for like a year or two, but I didn't realize what it was doing. It was crushing the confidence of that person's role. I was not allowing them to succeed. I was basically holding certain customers in my back pocket, and then like, I would forget about their job, something like that. And then like, I would be like, hey, we need to do this really fast. And like, it would just create all this chaos in the business. But it was also crushing the spirits of the person who was supposed to own that responsibility. And I lost a couple of good helpers because of that. So I highly recommend that at this point we start to condition the customers, and we not just conditioning the customers, but auditing whether this customer is going to be, are they problematic? Are they actually allowing you to grow and scale your business? Or are they just somebody who got you here but won't get you there? So we, every year, once we hit around $1 million, we started looking at the bottom of our P&L sales chart, and we would start to proactively eliminate certain customers that would eat up a lot of our time but would not create a lot of revenue. And it wasn't because we didn't want to work with them, but it was because from the business standpoint, it wasn't worth the effort. They were troublesome sometimes, and you know, they were also sometimes not loyal. Like, we had a couple customers that like we did a lot of vehicles for, but every single time they could only deal with me. They didn't want to talk to anybody on my team. It was always a rush. It couldn't be organized, had to be done now. And like, it just created chaos in the workplace, and it created a really big friction in the culture of the shop. And I saw, like, basically I remember going to the team and being like, hey, should we just like eliminate this customer for these reasons? And they were just like, I vote yes. And me being on the team side for that greatly improved culture. That they saw the vision that we're hitting. They noticed that this person fell out of compliance to what that vision would be and who we would like to work with. That's the cool thing about building your own business, is like, you can architect it however you want it to be. Especially once you get to this point, because now you have the revenue. And as long as you've done the fundamentals to keep your net profit in line, like, you can start to make moves where it's like, okay, I really don't want to tolerate that. Like, let me find somebody in their place. at this point too, at the 700K to a million mark, like you're going to find out whether you did a good job at building your foundation and uprighting your walls in your business. Because when you go to put the roof on, does the place collapse and fall over? Like, if you did not do a good job at building your systems and every single day is chaos and you always feel like you're behind, then the only thing you should do is work on your business. Like, every single night, you need to go through another season of grind for like 3 months and identify truly what is causing this dilemma. Is it that you need to terminate somebody that's operating below standard? Is it that you don't have the resources for your staff to do a good job to the standards that we want to achieve? Is it because, just identify what it is that's causing this pain and grief immediately. Because if not, then you're going to go to work every single day and be upset. It's not going to be a fun time, and it's going to be miserable. You need to start auditing, like, are you answering the same questions twice? If you are, then I had to create a got a minute board. I remember, this is actually funny. I remember that because I had no systems in place in my shop, and I think we were at like 1.1, everybody would come to my office. I would be over here like, yeah, I'm working on the business today. And I'd be over here like working on something. And team would come in, ask me a question. Team would come in, ask me a question, ask me a question, ask me a question, ask me. Like, it was just relentless, to the point that in another group that I was receiving business education from, somebody suggested that I created a got a minute board. And I had trained my staff essentially to come to me to be their brain. And we didn't have an answer documented for whatever their question was. So at first, that was my clue. So the got a minute board would be like, you are not going to interrupt me on my day. I have my today's list to do. But you would write the question on the board. And there was 2 things that would happen. One, it would be a really stupid question and they didn't want to write it on the board because then everybody could see the question. Or 2, we wrote the question down, and when I answered it, we would document what the answer was. And that was a slow, progressive way of chipping away at our systems and processes. So, getting to this point, if you are doing it correctly, you could literally define, like, if you're at $1 million in revenue and you were keeping, a 20% net profit, which is ideal, right? You're at 200K additional income after your salary. And so I was paying myself at like $45,000 a year when I hit my first million, and I was receiving like $250,000 to $300,000 in net in profit per year. But I was still the installer, and that was fine. But I later realized that I didn't want to be the installer forever, and I kind of went extreme about it, and I kept growing my team and bolting on all these parts and doing it the wrong way. I was not efficient at all. I didn't even know what revenue per employee was. I was just like, we need help. And so I just kept adding more staff. So revenue per employee is important because you could do $1 million with 5 guys, including yourself. But let's just say you're at the $1 million mark and you decide that maybe you're having a kid or you want to spend more time with your family. Now you can start asking yourself some questions. If you're at, let's just say, an optimal 20+% net profit, which I think that if you're in the business working it, you should be 25% net profit, period. But if you want to start living your life a little more and becoming more of a true leader in your business, like, congratulations, at $1 million, you can start to do that. You can take, let's just say, you'll take an income hit by all means, like live below your means, but like you'll take a financial income hit. But if you could make, let's just say, $250,000 in net profit on your $1 million, then you can apply 80,000 of that for a key man to come in and replace you. Find a really good project manager or a really good ops specialist, or Dan hired a guy from Chain Supply which understands efficiencies and understands numbers, somebody that's going to be in your bucks, looking at your KPIs and looking at how we can grow and scale the business. Like at $1 million revenue, you no longer should, like you have a legitimate business. You don't have to be doing everything anymore. You need to elevate your standard at this level of, I get paid from this, not this anymore. Unless you want to, like you can, but then you need somebody to replace you anyway, and your job is just being in the back teaching the guys, right? That's you really got to understand, what do you want out of life? I didn't want to be the installer anymore, so I wanted to be the leader. I wanted to provide opportunities like somebody provided to me. So at $1 million, if you're 25% net profit, 250K, 250, 1, 2, 3, minus 75, let's do $75,000. I mean, you're still making $175,000 net profit on the business. And again, back to the core principle of when you hire an employee, they should be not costing you money, they should be making you money. So 60 to 90 days after you hire this $75,000 role, they should have found something in there. If they're a rock star, they should have found something to pay for themselves. And then also now you start to optimize and start to apply methodologies to where they're receiving a return of income, a return on investment off of their skill set. So over time, you can get back to, let's just say you're truly just the leader of the business, and you can go from a 30% net profit down to 20 for a period of time, and you optimize back up to 25%. But for a cost of 5% net profit, you are now eliminating half of the responsibilities and only reporting to one person. Like, it's completely different doing business this way compared to you just being the firefighter and the chief question officer essentially in your business, where you are constantly just putting out fires, disorganized and in disarray, trying to solve every single little thing that comes your way. So extract yourself if that's the style of business that you want. If you do want to continue with the art side and you want to continue to install and apply yourself there, then make sure that you build it to where you're delegating them the management role of the business, like in the front end of house. And so I hope this is beneficial to somebody, identifying where they're at. Maybe, you have too many people on your staff. You realize that you're at $800,000 in sales with 8 employees and you need to cut some staff because you have a lot of freeloaders on your payroll, whether it be their fault or yours, and you've got to cut some fat. And we got to sometimes take 3 or 4 steps backwards to go forward. Leave me a comment below. Let me know if this was beneficial to you. I want to do nothing but serve this community, so reach out if you need anything. Peace.